Then he said, but Master Gotama, in what way is there the preservation of truth? How does one preserve truth? We asked Master Gotama about the preservation of truth. So you see the last sentence of the Buddha said, under these conditions, it is not proper for a wise man who preserves truth to come to the definite conclusion, only this is true, anything else is wrong. So this young Brahmin, he realized that he could not argue with the Buddha. So he stops arguing here and he wants to learn from the Buddha. He humbles himself and asks the Buddha, in what way is there a preservation of truth? Since the Buddha mentioned about the wise man who preserves truth, then he asked how to preserve truth. And the Buddha said, if a person has faith, Bharadvaja, he preserves truth when he says, my faith is thus, but he does not yet come to the definite conclusion, only this is true, anything else is wrong. In this way, Bharadvaja, there is the preservation of truth. In this way, he preserves truth. In this way, we describe the preservation of truth. But as yet, there is no discovery of truth. Similarly, if a person approves of something, or if he receives an oral tradition, or he reaches a conclusion based on reasoned cogitation, or if he gains a reflective acceptance of a view, he preserves truth when he says, my reflective acceptance of a view is thus, but he does not yet come to the definite conclusion, only this is true, anything else is wrong. In this way too, Bharadvaja, there is preservation of truth. In this way he preserves truth. In this way we describe the preservation of truth. But as yet there is no discovery of truth. So Buddha explained to him what is meant by preservation of truth. But the Buddha says, at this point, there's still no discovery of truth. And he asked, in that way, Master Gotama, there is the preservation of truth. In that way, one preserves truth. In that way, we recognize the preservation of truth. But in what way, Master Gotama, is there the discovery of truth? In what way does one discover truth? We asked Master Gotama about the discovery of truth. Here, Bharadvaja, a monk may be living in dependence on some village or town. Then a householder or a householder's son goes to him and investigates him in regard to three kinds of states, in regard to states based on greed, in regard to states based on hatred, and in regard to states based on delusion. Are there in this Venerable One any states based on greed, such that with his mind obsessed by those states, while not knowing he might say, I know, or while not seeing he might say, I see, or he might urge others to act in a way that would lead to their harm and suffering for a long time. As he investigates him, he comes to know there are no such states based on greed in this Venerable One. The bodily behavior and the verbal behavior of this Venerable One are not those of one affected by greed. And the Dhamma that this Venerable One teaches is profound, hard to see and hard to understand, peaceful and sublime, unattainable by mere reasoning, subtle, to be experienced by the wise. This Dhamma cannot easily be taught by one affected by greed. When he has investigated him and has seen that he is purified from states based on greed, he next investigates him in regard to states based on hatred. Are there in this Venerable One any states based on hatred, such that with his mind obsessed by those states, etc., he might urge others to act in a way that would lead to their harm and suffering for a long time? As he investigates him, he comes to know there are no such states based on hate in this Venerable One. The bodily behavior and verbal behavior of this Venerable One are not those of one affected by hate. And the Dhamma that this Venerable One teaches is profound, etc., to be experienced by the wise. This Dhamma cannot easily be taught by one affected by hate. When he has investigated him and has seen that he is purified from states based on hate, he next investigates him in regard to states based on delusion. Are there in this Venerable One any states based on delusion, such that with his mind obsessed by these states, etc., he might urge others to act in a way that would lead to their harm and suffering for a long time? As he investigates him, he comes to know there are no such states based on delusion in this Venerable One. The bodily behavior and verbal behavior of this Venerable One are not those of one affected by delusion. The Dhamma that this Venerable One teaches is profound, etc., to be experienced by the wise. This Dhamma cannot easily be taught by one affected by delusion. So here, I'll stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says that lay person, when he comes to a monk, before he can have faith in the monk, he should investigate whether that monk has greed, hatred, or delusion or not. And these states, if he has, it is evident by his bodily behavior, verbal behavior, and mental. So the Buddha is saying, when you come to a teacher, you have to investigate him in these three aspects. When he has investigated him and has seen that he is purified from states based on delusion, then he places faith in him. Filled with faith, he visits him and pays respect to him. Having paid respect to him, he gives ear. When he gives ear, he hears the Dhamma. Having heard the Dhamma, he memorizes it and examines the meaning of the teachings he has memorized. When he examines their meaning, he gains a reflective acceptance of those teachings. When he has gained a reflective acceptance of those teachings, zeal springs up. When zeal has sprung up, he applies his will. Having applied his will, he scrutinizes. Having scrutinized, he strives. Resolutely striving, he realizes with the body the ultimate truth and sees it by penetrating it with wisdom. In this way, Bharadvaja, there is the discovery of truth. In this way, one discovers truth. In this way, we describe the discovery of truth. But as yet, there is no final arrival at truth. Stop here for a moment. So here, you see these steps. It's worthwhile to pay careful attention here. When a person comes to a prospective teacher, first he must investigate him, whether he has greed, hatred, and delusion. And when he sees that he has no greed, hatred, and delusion, and he teaches a Dhamma that is profound, then he places faith in the teacher. And then, having faith in the teacher, he should visit the teacher often. And when he visits the teacher, he should be respectful. When he is respectful, the teacher teaches him the Dhamma. Then he hears the Dhamma and memorizes the Dhamma. In those days, they had no books, so they had to memorize. And nowadays, it's more convenient. We have books. And then examine the meaning of the Dhamma. And then when he understands, then he gains a reflective acceptance. And then zeal springs up. And then after that, he starts to cultivate the holy path. Applies his will and scrutinizes. And then he strives. And then realizes with the body the ultimate truth. Realizes with the body, that means he attains the jhanas. The states of meditative absorption with the body, and then penetrates it with wisdom. In that way, Master Gautama, there is the discovery of truth. In that way, one discovers truth. In that way, we recognize the discovery of truth. But in what way, Master Gautama, is there the final arrival at truth? In what way does one finally arrive at truth? We asked Master Gautama about the final arrival at truth. And the Buddha said, the final arrival at truth, Bharadvaja, lies in the repetition, development, and cultivation of those same things. In this way, Bharadvaja, there is the final arrival at truth. In this way, one finally arrives at truth. In this way, we describe the final arrival at truth. I'll stop here for a moment. So here, having learned the Dhamma and cultivating the holy path, the Buddha said, you have to repeat. Repetition, development, and cultivation of those same things. Then finally, you arrive at the truth. In that way, Master Gautama, there is the final arrival at truth. In that way, one finally arrives at truth. In that way, we recognize the final arrival at truth. But what, Master Gautama, is most helpful for the final arrival at truth? We asked Master Gautama about the thing most helpful for the final arrival at truth. And the Buddha said, striving is the most helpful for the final arrival at truth, Bharadvaja. If one does not strive, one will not finally arrive at truth. But because one strives, one does finally arrive at truth. That is why striving is most helpful for the final arrival at truth. This striving can also be said to be energetic effort. Energetic effort, diligence is most helpful. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for striving? We asked Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for striving. Scrutiny is most helpful for striving, Bharadvaja. If one does not scrutinize, one will not strive. But because one scrutinizes, one strives. That is why scrutiny is most helpful for striving. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for scrutiny? We asked Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for scrutiny. Application of will is most helpful for scrutiny, Bharadvaja. If one does not apply one's will, one will not scrutinize. But because one applies one's will, one scrutinizes. That is why application of will is most helpful for scrutiny. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for application of will? We asked Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for application of will. Zeal is most helpful for application of will, Bharadvaja. If one does not arouse zeal, one will not apply one's will. But because one arouses zeal, one applies one's will. That is why zeal is most helpful for application of the will. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for zeal? We asked Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for zeal. A reflective acceptance of the teachings is most helpful for zeal, Bharadvaja. If one does not gain a reflective acceptance of the teachings, zeal will not spring up. But because one gains a reflective acceptance of the teachings, zeal springs up. That is why a reflective acceptance of the teachings is most helpful for zeal. Stop here for a moment. This one, in our Dhamma, reflective acceptance of the teachings means you learn the Dhamma, especially on the Four Noble Truths, and you understand. When you understand, then you get a reflective acceptance. And when this happens, you have attained right view. You've entered the stream. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for a reflective acceptance of the teachings? We asked Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for a reflective acceptance of the teachings. Examination of the teaching is most helpful for a reflective acceptance of the teachings, Bharadvaja. If one does not examine their meaning, one will not gain a reflective acceptance of the teachings. But because one examines their meaning, one gains a reflective acceptance of the teachings. That is why examination of the meaning is most helpful for a reflective acceptance of the teachings. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for examination of the meaning? We asked Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for examination of meaning. Memorizing the teachings is most helpful for examining the meaning, Bharadvaja. If one does not memorize a teaching, one will not examine its meaning. But because one memorizes a teaching, one examines its meaning. Stop here for a moment. This memorizing the teachings I mentioned was because in the past they did not have books, so they had to repeat the Dhamma that they heard, especially the suttas. They repeat it. Then it becomes more familiar to them. Then from there they examine the meaning. But nowadays, memorizing the teachings, you can say, can be replaced by studying the suttas in the book form. The Nikayas, you keep reading the Nikayas again and again and again and again. It's just like memorizing the teachings. Or listening to the Dhamma talks like these. Dhamma talks based on the suttas. I listen to them again and again and again and again. Then it slowly sinks in. That is equivalent to memorizing the teachings. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for memorizing the teachings? We asked Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for memorizing the teachings. Hearing the Dhamma is most helpful for memorizing the teachings, Bharadvaja. If one does not hear the Dhamma, one will not memorize the teachings. But because one hears the Dhamma, one memorizes the teachings. That's why hearing the Dhamma is most helpful for memorizing the teachings. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for hearing the Dhamma? We asked Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for hearing the Dhamma. Giving ear is most helpful for hearing the Dhamma, Bharadvaja. If one does not give ear, one will not hear the Dhamma. But because one gives ear, one hears the Dhamma. That is why giving ear is most helpful for hearing the Dhamma. Stop here for a moment. the willingness to learn the Dhamma, to hear the Dhamma, or to read the Dhamma, that is very important. Only when you understand the Dhamma and you gain a reflective acceptance of the teachings, then only you can progress to Aryan stages. If you don't hear the Dhamma, you cannot get right view. And if you cannot get right view, you have not entered on the Noble Eightfold Path. The Noble Eightfold Path always starts with the first factor, right view. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for giving ear? We ask Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for giving ear. Paying respect is most helpful for giving ear, Bharadvaja. If one does not pay respect, one will not give ear. But because one pays respect, one gives ear. That is why paying respect is most helpful for giving ear. Stop here for a moment. This paying respect, you see the Buddha mentioned, is quite important. Some people, they come to the Dhamma, they are very arrogant. They find it very difficult to pay respect to a monk. So if they have this kind of attitude, it's an obstruction, because if a person has this type of attitude, it shows that the person thinks that he knows everything, that he knows a lot. So he is not willing to humble himself. Only when you are willing to humble yourself, then only you are willing to give ear, willing to hear what the teacher says, instead of having all your own opinions. So this respect, also paying respect, is also very helpful. That's why, like in the Thai tradition, new novice monks, either samanera or even bhikkhu, fully ordained monk, if he is still new, whenever he speaks to the teacher in Thailand, they have to put their palms together, Anjali. Every time they speak to their teacher, they Anjali. And this tradition is not only for disciples, it is it's a very good tradition. Even senior monks, like me, if I speak to a more senior monk, it becomes natural to put the hands together out of respect, to show respect. So it's a very good practice to humble yourself. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for paying respect? We ask Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for paying respect. Visiting is most helpful for paying respect, Bharadvaja. If one does not visit a teacher, one will not pay respect to him. But because one visits a teacher, one pays respect to him. That is why visiting is most helpful for paying respect. But what Master Gotama is most helpful for visiting? We ask Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for visiting. Faith is most helpful for visiting, Bharadvaja. If faith in the teacher does not arise, one will not visit him. But because faith in the teacher arises, one visits him. That is why faith is most helpful for visiting. We asked Master Gotama about the preservation of truth, and Master Gotama answered about the preservation of truth. We approve of and accept that answer, and so we are satisfied. We asked Master Gotama about the discovery of truth, and Master Gotama answered about the discovery of truth. We approve of and accept that answer, and so we are satisfied. We asked the Master Gotama about the final arrival at truth, and Master Gotama answered about the final arrival at truth. We approve of and accept that answer, and so we are satisfied. We asked Master Gotama about the thing most helpful for the final arrival at truth, and Master Gotama answered about the thing most helpful for the final arrival at truth. We approve of and accept that answer, and so we are satisfied. Whatever we ask Master Gotama about, that he has answered us. We approve of and accept that answer, and so we are satisfied. Formerly, Master Gotama, we used to think, who are these bald-pated recluses, these swarthy menial offspring of the kinsman's feet, that they would understand the Dhamma? But Master Gotama has inspired in me love for recluses, confidence in recluses, reverence for recluses, magnificent Master Gotama, etc. So he took refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. From today, let Master Gotama remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. That's the end of the sutta. So here you see this arrogant young Brahmin come to argue with the Buddha. Finally, he realized that the Buddha is actually an Arahant Sammasambuddha. So he asked questions to learn the Dhamma. So whatever he asked, the Buddha answered him very clearly. So in the end, he took refuge with the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, which means that actually he changed his religion from being one of the Brahmin religion, became the Buddhist. So you see, like all this teaching the Buddha gave in front of hundreds of these Brahmins, probably most of them would have taken refuge with the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha and became followers of the Buddha. Okay, we end here.